Hello, and welcome to the Post Lift Podcast. My name is John, and welcome to the first episode of my show. And this is going to be something training focused. Obviously, kind of you could gather from the title of the show, but there's going to be a little bit of everything else. This is going to be kind of a reflective thing for me personally, but hopefully in my reflections, it might, make you think about something, or I don't know, you might find it interesting. To all of you who are older listeners, hello, welcome back. And the reason I'm saying that is I actually used to have this show probably 3-4 years ago, maybe even longer than that, I'm not sure. But that show was predominantly around weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting. And at the time, I was prepping for a competition, and I kind of just documented my time with that and also rambled about a bunch of other stuff. So if you are back, hello. It's going to be a little different this time. I hope you don't mind. And to any of you who are brand new, welcome. Hello. I appreciate you. So the reason that this is going to be kind of a reflective thing is for my own sake. A lot of people will advocate for journaling. That's something that a lot of people have talked to me about in terms of dealing with anxiety, maybe even my ADHD. And I just find that journaling is not something that works well for me. Something I'll definitely advocate for. I think it's definitely useful, but for me, I've always been somebody where if I was able to talk something through, it will really help bring things to light instead of just kind of being in my head. So I hope you don't mind me rambling. There's going to be a lot of it, but there's still going to be a lot of fitness involved with this. I'm in a barn right now, kind of in the area that I like to train. I have my barbell behind me and my bumper plates as well. So there's going to be a lot of fitness talk, and we'll get into that obviously as time goes on, but today I just kind of want this to be an introduction to myself and to my training. So we'll get into that in a second, but the reason this is all coming about is I'm going through a career change right now. I'm trying to get into law enforcement to become a patrolman, and that's caused me to have a lot of reflection on just where I'm at in life, where I've been, where I'm going in the future. And so a lot of soul searching has been done already, but it's something that I kind of want to continue. And I thought it might be interesting for me to sort of document that. But another big aspect of doing this for myself selfishly is accountability. And I'll talk about that as well. But very briefly, accountability is a really important thing, I think, for everybody nowadays. I think things are kind of just laissez-faire and you kind of just go with the flow. And I'm a very go with the flow person, but through dealing with the hiring process of becoming a police officer, there's been a lot of accountability throughout the whole thing of just, reaching the standards that they expect you to reach to get hired. And fortunately, I've been able to reach pretty much all of them. I'm not hired by my place yet. I have a conditional offer, but I'm not going to just sit here and be like, hey, I'm becoming a cop. But I'm hoping that by having the accountability through the podcast to make sure that I'm talking and, providing something for you, but also in turn with that, I'm going to be providing something for myself going forward. I just think it would be a nice thing to have. So I hope you enjoy it. Little about myself. I'm 27. I'll be 28 in a couple months now, and I live in Maine. I'm here on a farm, and yeah, I talk a lot. And surprisingly, I'm actually an introvert. I come off very extroverted, but I'm all about my alone time. I like being alone a lot of the time. I still love having friendships and, seeing my loved ones, but I do really like just being able to reflect and kind of be, I don't want to say a loner, but just to kind of contemplate things. I'm very contemplative. So that's me. Very small portion of me, and you'll get to know me as time goes on. For all of you who are watching this video, I hope it's okay. This will be on Spotify. It will also be on YouTube, and pretty much all my socials are going to be at the Post Lift Podcast. That's also where you can find the Spotify and YouTube, and I'll just say that here in the beginning before we go on forward. So, like I said, I kind of wanted to give you a rundown of my training and where I've been and what I've done fitness-wise in my life, and kind of just have that as the bulk of this episode today. Because as time goes on, I will get into more reflective things, but I thought it would be kind of cool to give you a history of myself with fitness, and kind of maybe for myself as well to just see where I've been and where I'm going to be going in the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, sports. Like many people, the first real thing you get into fitness-wise as a kid is sports. Now, I was already a really active kid growing up on the farm here. I had tons of acres to be able to run around, climb trees, and I just grew up being a supercharged ADHD kid who would have a hard time sitting down and staying put. And I still have that issue today. I've learned to calm down a little bit, but still, it's in there. But sports-wise, I played a lot of soccer growing up. That was predominantly my sport. It's still something I love, and it's really the only thing that I've tracked in my life. I love soccer, and with that, there was a lot of running and training, and I just learned a lot of great things from my coaches in that time period, and traveling, and just being held accountable to my teammates and to my coach. It helped grow me up a lot in that period of time, and I think without it, I would not have been as disciplined as I could be. And I think it just taught me a lot about expectations in life and winning and losing, and just kind of having the mindset behind grit and being able to push through things. I went to a tiny school, so there were no tryouts. There were no, oh, I hope I get this position. It was just, oh, you're on the team. Great. Which meant we had some guys who were really good, but also we had some guys who were not very good. And I don't say that in a menacing way. It's just true. But there was a lot of enjoyment out of that because there was a lot of authenticity of just what you expect out of people. But also you saw a lot of improvement too. That was one of the great things of it too. I remember one year our goal was to just make sure that every single person on the team scored. And we got it done. It was awesome. So there were a lot of great moments from high school sports that I took, and I still hold a lot of those things in me today. And I think part of this whole law enforcement journey for me has been just kind of the enjoyment of having that challenge, being able to push myself, and also camaraderie and just being able to push through. It's been a huge aspect of that for me, and I know that there will be more as time goes on, but I think without my years in soccer, learning how to have courage and to push through, I don't think I'd be able to get through like I am now. So that's kind of my speech about high school sports, and I think that if you have kids, or if you're in high school or anything like that right now, get involved with some sort of sport, or get your kid involved in some sort of sport, because developmentally that is huge. It's kind of a non-negotiable, I think, in my head, just because that can structure you so well to give you a foundation of just who you are as a person to push you through. It makes you tough in the right ways, but it also makes you recognize that, hey, you can lose sometimes. So it's very cliche, but it's true. Cliches are usually true. Anyways, so I graduate high school, and like a lot of people, I don't go into high school sports. College sports. There's a very small percentage of people who actually do that. And you kind of lose that whole accountability thing and pushing through and getting challenged. Like, yes, academically that can be a thing, but physically it kind of just goes away. I think a lot of people like myself at that time, I would just, occasionally do the sport that I played as just like a fun thing, but you get rid of competition, you get rid of practice, and that kind of sucks. That's something I really loved, and this is the thing that I remember the most about high school. I think that's the thing that people remember the most about high school. So I don't have that in college, at least for the first portion of it. I'd play some pickup soccer here and there, but there was no gym. There was no real being active. There was no real metric of like, oh, I have to get up and run today so I can be fit, so then I'll be good for practice. So that was kind of the first portion of college. And then eventually I became friends with a guy in one of my media studies classes, and I think he was going to the gym a little bit, and I had started to kind of experiment with going to the gym, but not really consistently. I had no clue what I was doing. And then we became closer friends, and I remember going to his apartment, and he's like, oh, have you ever heard of Jeff Nippard? Now, Jeff is definitely a great resource in terms of fitness. and just kind of the science behind, going to the gym and being physically active and strength training. So he is definitely a great resource in terms of dumbing things down, but he's still so scientific at the same time. So at the time, because I already didn't know anything really, it was kind of hard to take things in from Jeff, but it still opened my eyes to a lot of things training wise. So we would try to implement those things at a gym. I think we went to Planet Fitness, and I remember just sitting in my buddy's apartment eating white rice with hot sauce, and we got a rotisserie chicken from the supermarket, and we would eat that and hang out with his cat. And there's a lot of good memories from that. We would eventually go to Planet Fitness, do a dry scoop of pre-workout. Sometimes he would snort it, which is insane to me. I never did that. Absolute animal. But we would just go in and we would have fun and we would train. And I think having a partner when you first start out is a huge thing. And there was definitely a lot of fear in the beginning. There's a classic thing of, well, I'm a beginner. I don't know what I'm doing. There's other people here who are stronger. But then you're in that Planet Fitness and you see a guy who's wearing jeans, business shoes covered in mud, like wingtips, and then a gray t-shirt that's all ratty and a reflective construction vest at like 3 p.m. And you're like, you know what? It could be worse. At least I'm wearing gym clothing, but at the same time, there was kind of a funny aspect where it's like, hey, at least that guy's going right now and he's grinding. So to any of you who are new to fitness or who want to get into it and then you have a lot of like reservations behind it, just go do a couple simple things. And honestly, very few people are judging. And if they're judging, they're jerks and they have bigger problems. But that's just a small percentage of people. Usually the folks who are really avid gym goers who are there consistently that you see, especially the jack ones, yes, some of them are going to be egotistical, but for the most part, people either don't care or they're excited that you're there. They're like, oh, good for you. Most everybody's really nice, and that's something that I learned over time. So as somebody who didn't have a bunch of confidence at the time, especially because I was so small, I was like 140 to 145 pounds, like 5'11". I was really, really thin. A lot of intimidation going into that. So everybody starts somewhere, and that was my end of the spectrum. I was really skinny, and I'm still a thin guy, but definitely not where I was in the past. So eventually, my buddy and I had to stop going together just because life got busy. So that meant that I had to go solo. That's kind of the next growth in the gym journey, I guess you could call it. And that was a little bit intimidating because accountability-wise, that leaves it down to me. I'm not showing up to have, fun with my friend at the gym. I'm there to do it for myself, to look better, to be better. And I had very little knowledge. But over time, I picked up a little bit of something here and there. I think I got up to I gained like 10 to 15 pounds at that point. So I'm around like 150, 155 at this point. Maybe even 160. I think I was around like 157 that I got to at that point, but nothing really impressive. I gained some weight, and the biggest thing with that was just eating food, but I still wasn't eating the right thing. I would track my macros, but it would stress me out a little bit, and I just wasn't eating enough at the time. So my results were not what they should have been at the time. But right as I kind of got into the groove of things, and I was really enjoying my college gym, which was predominantly all old people, which was really fun. COVID hit. The pandemic hit. And it's like, crap. I was just getting used to this. I was loving it. Now, for myself, like so many other people, I was in an awkward position of just not knowing what to do. And, I think without people's yoga studios or their CrossFit boxes or their bodybuilding gym or their barbell club, people don't really know what to do at the end of the day. And I think that's the boat that a lot of people were in. And that's where I found myself. I was like, what the heck am I going to do? I'm on the farm. I can still run and do these things, but I'm on this gym to this journey to get like a big bro, blah, 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 blah. That's not really what I was thinking necessarily, but there is a little bit of a pinch of truth in that. I wanted to look bigger and better, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So that took me to YouTube. I looked for the best outlet I could for information. And, Jeff was still there and I was still able to watch his stuff. And that eventually led me to a guy named John Meadows. Now, John, he's unfortunately passed away. He was kind of a pillar in fitness and just functional training and bodybuilding and just really having a lot of knowledge. He was a wealth of knowledge, but he was not as wordy as Jeff. And I think that's something that I really liked about him. He was also just a fantastic human being, very kind man. And I think luckily his family still uploads videos that John made because he had just a plethora of things. So go check out John. Go check out Jeff. So John Meadows and Jeff Nippard. They're really great. But in terms of home workouts, John had these resistant band workouts that he came up with, and at the perfect time, he kind of capitalized on it. He said, you're at home. You don't necessarily have to have a barbell. Just get these resistant bands, and you can do all these things. And that kind of helped me get through the first portion of the pandemic, and that really helped me kind of maintain some things. Mentally, it was a little tough because there was not as much of an enjoyment out of it. You're there playing with thick rubber bands, essentially, at the end of the day. And only a couple times did I smack myself with them, which sucked. But there just really wasn't much behind it. And I kind of tried to scrape by. Like, my dad had a couple. I think they're over here somewhere. My dad had these little weights. I'm trying to see if I can see him, but regardless, he had a couple just little dumbbells that were probably up to like 20 pounds at the most. And so I would get by with those things. And then eventually the gates opened. The gyms were allowed to be opened, and it was a great thing. I was like, yes, thank God. Now, did I want to go back to Planet Fitness? Heck no, I did not. So I wanted to find something a little bit better. And I have this weird thing too, where it's like, if the gym is not close to me within like a 5-minute period, I really have a hard time getting there. That's a bad thing about myself. So I looked for something really close, and there was this gym that I think kind of made out great. They kind of capitalized out on the fact that it was a brand new gym and they wanted to get open and have all these safety precautions. And so they were one of the first places to open up in my area. And it was kind of a Globo gym, very bodybuilder centered, but they still had a huge turf pad and, a lot of barbell racks and all this other stuff. And it was great. I was able to go there, and that's kind of where everything took off for me. And that's kind of where I started really delving deeper into the gym and fitness. Now, several months went by. I probably got up to like 165 pounds, I'd say. So I put on another 5 to 10 pounds, I'd say. And I was feeling a lot better about myself. I was starting to get some arms, but nothing crazy. I've never been a huge bulky guy by any means, but I just found myself kind of going through the motions. And again, I was not happy. And this is kind of a theme that I have found out about myself, is like, I'll go through this fitness area and stick along with it for a while, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy crap, I'm bored. Which is kind of one of the things I'm finding with this podcast, is like, is this just maybe me, catering to my boredom? And I think a little bit yes, but I also think that this is just something genuinely I enjoy. But I digress. So I kind of got to a portion where I was just doing push-pull legs, and I was like, well, I'm getting bored with this. Maybe I'll do upper-lower splits. And then I did that for a while, and I didn't really like that. And then I found myself going less consistently, and then I was like, let me take to YouTube again and try to find some sort of motivation and inspiration of where I can go. So from John Meadows, I eventually found myself going on and looking up Juji Mufu, and Juji's a great guy to also watch. He's so fun. I watched Eric Bugenhagen a lot, and Juji just had all these characters of people that I could watch. And I didn't really watch Juji for specifically fitness stuff. It was more entertainment along with fitness. He's very entertaining. And then that led me to what really opened me up to fitness all the way, and that is Olympic weightlifting. Juji had videos with two guys, Clarence Kennedy and Zach Tellender. And they really opened up to my eyes of what I would love doing eventually. So Clarence is a huge iconic person in terms of Olympic weightlifting on the YouTube platform, and he's just crazy to watch, crazy talented, and he just really was a exceptional to watch, to the point where I was like, there's no freaking way I will ever be able to reproduce what he's doing, and most people cannot. So he was just entertaining to watch, but he's a very reserved, quiet guy. So in terms of personality, he's great, but also um, I think because he's just so high quality, there was kind of an unreachable feeling to him. And so I was like, I will never be able to reach that sort of thing, so why even try? Not a great mindset to have, admittedly, but my eyes then turned to Zach Tellender. Part of what I really liked about Zach is his personality and the way that he was built and how he moved. And I found that I saw a lot of myself in him, personality wise, just his humor and his build. He's this long, lanky guy. He's pretty much me, but like the next size up. I think he's like 6'4" to 6'6", somewhere in there. But he's long and lanky. He's not jacked, and he's okay with it. I know that, like myself, I'm sure he's wanting more. And, he's over the years, he's changed a lot. He's not really Olympic weightlifting focused anymore. He's really focusing on his music and just being healthy. And I found myself that I'm kind of in the same boat where I just want to be healthy nowadays. But at the time, Zach was really focused on Olympic weightlifting, and he was just much more approachable in terms of knowledge. So I ended up going to his YouTube channel. He had tons of tutorials, and I was like, well, if only I could get into this. I'm still going to this Globo bodybuilding gym, and I know absolutely nothing about a barbell other than like, oh, I can squat occasionally. My squat form was absolutely jacked. Like, it was terrible, but I don't know. I wanted to get into this Olympic weightlifting thing. And so I tried doing my first power clean. For those of you who do not know, Olympic weightlifting is a sport. It's called, technically, it's just called weightlifting, but for the purpose of your brain, I'll just call it Olympic weightlifting for now. It is a competition comprised of the clean and jerk and the snatch, and however much weight you do with those two things combined, which is called your total weight-wise, whoever has the most amount of weight gets the gold, silver, and bronze medal, yada, yada, yada. Look it up. Very entertaining. And it's kind of a dying sport, but there is, I think partly because of the CrossFit world, but just more, I think because of the way that people are getting influenced online, there is kind of an upswing with popularity, which is really cool to see, but it's very niche and nerdy in terms of like the strength world and the fitness world. So anyways, Zach was much more approachable with his material, and I started delving into it a lot deeper, and that just caused me to get inspired. Again, I'm at this gym. I'm not doing hardly anything at all. My squat's trash, like I was just saying. And I tried my first power clean, and then the job I had at the time, I was working with this woman, and she said, oh, my daughter's actually one of the workers there. She works at the front desk, and just say, hey, I know your mom, yada, yada, yada. Just introduce yourself. She's very sweet. So I saw this girl, said, hello. By the way, I work with your mom, blah, 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 blah. And we just, very, very, very surface level-y, like, oh, just somebody you see at the gym and you wave to them and yada, yada, yada. I kind of opened up to the fact that I wanted to look into Olympic weightlifting, and like I couldn't find an area to do that, and it was a little frustrating. And she said, oh, well, we actually have a trainer here who could coach you in that sort of thing, and I'll reach out to her for you. She can help you with that maybe. At the time, my grandmother had passed, and I know this is very sudden. I'm sorry, just to throw that on you. My grandmother passed away, and I was dealing with all this stuff, and I'm at the gym, and I actually went there right after they took her body away, and that whole thing was crazy because I think I was the only at the time when she had passed, I was the only one who was there other than my aunts, I think. Yeah, my two aunts. So very emotionally distraught, and I really didn't know how to process it. But the person from the funeral home came by, took her away, and I was like, I just need to get out of here. Things are very highly emotional. I'm somebody who needs to, I need to go away and deal with this. That's kind of how I am. And so I went to the gym, and this trainer's there. And so we start talking, and I said, yeah, this thing happened. I'm just here. I don't know why I'm here, but, somebody told me about you, and I'd like to be introduced to Olympic weightlifting. I've already done some research online. She was familiar with Zach and all these other people. And so we kind of just went from there. And we met once a week for the next like 2.5 years from there. And it was great. It taught me a lot about myself in terms of the fact that when I'm anxious, I'm somebody who sorry, there's a rooster. Where was I? I found out about myself that I am somebody who rushes when I get anxious, and that was one of the big lessons that I've learned from Olympic weightlifting. But it was something that are you done, dude? That was something that I learned about myself in there, and I was able to apply it to other areas of my life, including apparently he's not done. I was able to apply that to my work life and to friendships, relationships, so many other things. And I'm still dealing with that to this day. So that was one of the first real things that helped me through learning how to Olympic weightlift and, having a coach. And I eventually ended up, geez, I'm crow. I eventually ended up leaving the gym I was at, and I went to this barbell club that was much more friendly towards Olympic weightlifting. The reason I say that is in Olympic weightlifting, kind of a non-negotiable is dropping the barbell. You have this huge weight over your head, you're standing up with it, and are you going to just drop it down on your shoulders? You probably shouldn't, and it just wears you out. So it's not an egotistical thing. And at the gym I was at, I did it a couple times. The staff workers would come over to me and be like, hey, we don't allow that because it's going to annoy people, which is kind of annoying because you have people grunting and yada, 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 doing other things. It's like, why can't I do this? But I'm not going to get on my high horse about that because I already kind of wanted to go this place. It looked really great. And so I trained at this other facility for like a year and a half. And that's where I really started ramping up to, competitions and getting ready for that. And during that time, my weight increased in terms of my body, but also my total, how much I was actually lifting. And I got to really push myself. The biggest area that I learned with that was the squat, especially because I really hate squatting. I don't think many people do love it, but personally me, I hate it. And so having that mental toughness was really a great lesson in that time. But again, that word that keeps coming around, accountability. I was accountable to my coach, and in terms of my nutrition and my numbers and what I was doing, she was sending these programs weekly to me, and I would have to do them and keep track of my progress and then send them to her. And it's like there is a lot of transparency from that, and that was just huge. And, I made mistakes in that time, and I could have treated my training a lot better than I did looking back on it. But I grew from that. I eventually went on to do competitions, and I went to this one, and I really enjoyed doing it. I did well. It was in New York, and then the day that my competition came, there's weight classes, and you obviously have to make your weight. You have to weigh in, and that was kind of the first thing that really turned me off from doing competitions. I'm sure if I went back and did it right the first time, things might be different. It was on me that my nutrition was not where it was at. I was a lot heavier than I was supposed to be, which meant that I had to do a very hard cut. That was something that really kind of turned me off from doing competitions going forward. I really did not like the having to do this huge weight cut to be able to perform. it just really kind of turned me off from it in the moment. Looking back on it now, I definitely could do it again. But at the time being, I was like, holy crap, I never want to do that again. I remember being I think I had to lose like 5 or 6 pounds. It could have been more. I'm not sure. I just remember being in a hot shower with the heat up all the way. At dinner, all I was able to have was like a very small portion of chicken, a very small thing of spinach, and I was at that. And I wasn't able to drink water. And I had to get in this hot shower, do that. And then the next day, it's gross, but I just had a cup and I just kept spitting into it. And I was actually like 3 or 4 pounds beneath where I was supposed to be. So I lost a crap ton of weight within like a 8-hour period. But after that, like I said, I did really well. It was enjoyable. My technique was not as good as I would want it to be looking back on that, but it was a good experience. But eventually, like I said, I got out and I was like, I don't really want to do this because of the whole weight cut thing again. Like, maybe again in the future, but I just don't feel good. The other half of it, and this is very much like a boo-hoo thing that I got to get over. I got a lot of anxiety behind tracking my macros. Some people have that. It's just you get to the end of the day, and if you're not treating it correctly, it's on you. There's that accountability thing again. But just so much stress behind being like, oh, I didn't meet my protein goal or my carb goal, well, carbs are easy, but it was mostly protein. Or I ate too much fat, or I ate too much sugar this day. And that just like, I didn't feel quote unquote healthy doing that. I eventually found out I figured out, rather than having an app on my phone tracking that, I just figured out, all right, I know that I need these meals to make these things. So I'll just focus on the meals rather than the actual numbers. And that's helped me a lot. I barely drink. I don't smoke. I don't really eat anything too crappy. Like, of course I love junk food. Like, give me a bag of chips and I'll destroy that so fast. But I'm just a lot healthier, I think, at the end of the day, knowing what I need to eat rather than just like having to fixate it like I would by having to track my macros. So the short version of it is I eventually stopped doing competitions, and the next period of my life was focused around just doing what I wanted. And I learned a lot from that period in terms of how to not do things. When you don't have a coach, your brain instantly goes into gym bro mode, and you're like, I want to push myself even more. And the thing about doing a strength sport like that, whether it's powerlifting or CrossFit or weightlifting, yada, 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 usually it's, hey, you have this certain number you have to meet at your peak time at competition. Prior to that, you have to really limit yourself. And then after competition, there's kind of a downward slope of like, you need to slow down slowly so then you don't like absolutely fry yourself out. Because that peak season, that's game day. That's when you're supposed to be producing the best results you can. And I had just done that. And I was like, let's continue to ride this wave. Because I think I didn't lift as much weight as I could have, I think. And that was kind of my mindset at the time, where I was like, holy crap, I could do way more. And I wish I did more, and rah, 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 for my own ego. And so going into that next period where I wasn't doing competitions anymore, and my coach, she went on to do other things at the time because I think she started a business. And I was like, let me just go ham. And so I started to just lift more heavy for me at least. I was pretty weak in terms of like what you can actually do for people who are actually dedicated. And I ended up just kind of jacking up my back slowly. I just didn't feel very good. My hips were hurting. I dropped a barbell on my head a bunch of times while I was full of weight. So that was dumb. And then the real thing that really kicked it was actually not weightlifting, centered. I went on a bachelor weekend for my buddy, and we went to a swimming hole, and I dove headfirst into the swimming hole from like 20 feet up off a cliff. And when I was coming in at an angle while I was diving, and my hands are in front of me and yada, 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 my back feet kind of came forward towards my butt. And by the time I reached the water and I was entering it, they were kind of at a 90-degree angle, absolutely parallel with the water. I don't know why this happened. I've dived. I've dove. Yeah, I've dove. I've dove in. I've gone into the water in a spear-like fashion. so many times in my life, and I've been successful. But for some reason, this time my legs decided to go at this 90-degree angle where my calves and my feet are like parallel to the water. So by the time I made impact with the water with my legs, I just like stopped myself completely, and my back arched upwards, and I popped something in my lower back. And for the next like year and a half, this was a real pain. Like I had a very difficult time sleeping, and I was in a lot of pain. And so I kind of backed off of just really doing a lot of weightlifting stuff. I still wanted to do it, but I think after that time I got hurt, I was like, oh, I'm not. I started making excuses of like, A, not getting better. So I was just like, oh, well, I don't feel good, so I'm not going to do anything. And then B, that causes me to not make time in the gym, so I'm losing results, and then I get lazy over time. So I am in this weird limbo period, and then I started doing some PT for it, just in my own personal research, and I improved a little bit. It still bothers me to this day. It's probably been like 2 years since I've had this, but it's more of like a flare-up thing now, discomfort-wise. But the pain shoots from my lower back into my leg and in my butt, and I think it's either like a bulging disc or a slipped disc, something like that. I don't think it's sciatica, but so I'm in this weird limbo period, and then I'm like, I got to get my butt back in the gym. And so I start going back to this place. I moved at the time. I go to this other gym, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start getting back into weightlifting. So I did slowly. I had lost so much strength at that time. It was crazy, but I eventually found myself doing it again, and I found a lot of happiness out of doing it. But then I said, you know what? I'm going to combine some bodybuilding stuff with my weightlifting, and that's kind of how I trained for the next several months. And I moved again, found a different gym, and that was a lot of fun, but there was something very soul-sucking about that gym that I went to. And it kind of caused me in a stupid way to be like, I don't want to go. And by not going, that causes you to not go even more. And I was eating at a level of going to the gym and training. So I gained more weight, and I got I've never been a fat person, but I got a little bit of a gut because I had stopped training, but I was eating all these calories, and it was like, holy crap, I need to go again. My girlfriend at the time was like, look at yourself. And if you had seen me, I probably didn't look too different than I did now, but there was just this gut, and I was like, I never thought I'd see this. But like, there was no pecs. I was like skinny fat, and it was just a weird place. So I started going back to the gym. We would go a little bit, and I was going to the Planet Fitness, and I just started working on bodybuilding stuff. And then again, I just went through this weird period of like not going to the gym much. But luckily that period didn't last as long. I started going more consistently, and that kind of leads to us to today. So I moved again, and during that period where I was at Planet Fitness in that time, before my move, I had started the process of trying to become a police officer, and I had made my metrics for my PT. It took, I think, 3 tries. The first 2 times I sucked at my sit-ups, and that's usually the thing that gets most people. I had to have 38 in a minute, and I just wasn't cranking them out. The first time I didn't have good form. The second time I just did not time myself well. I didn't have a good pace. When you do that, you're supposed to throw yourself back and then get up, but I was kind of letting myself down. So I was like, all right, those aren't good excuses. I got to get this thing. So I just really cranked on them, and then eventually got my PT standard, and that was good to go forward. So that leads us, like I said, to today with where I'm at, and we're back to accountability and what that has meant. And this kind of is the reason of the podcast. So the department that I've been working with has done this really cool thing. Unlike most departments where you do your PT test and it's kind of one and done, pass or fail, they don't really help you. Like, some places might help you a little bit afterwards, and we'll be like, we'll test you one more time. But usually it's just like, it's that and it's all in you. No help. And that was the case for my first 2 tests. this test was great because they had you go through. They had us all go in together. I think there's like 5 of us trying to get hired on right now as cadets. And they said, we do things a little differently. We're going to meet weekly. And even if you've already passed, which is the boat I'm in, we're going to have you do it every single week. And it's not mandatory, but like wink, wink, it is mandatory. And that's just been kind of a blessing in disguise because of the whole accountability thing. It's made me want to get better. It's made me show up. It's made me feel like I have to do this thing for myself and for these people to prove myself and prove my worth, to show that I'm actually going to do my job well. But it also has been great in terms of camaraderie and meeting the other guys and giving each other advice and motivation to keep going forward, even if you've passed. And some of the guys still haven't passed. And, you know, I unfortunately am somebody who wants to give a lot of advice when I know something about something and I've passed. So I've had to kind of dumb myself down with that, and I recognize that. But I asked the lieutenant I'm working with, like, hey, can I give advice? And at the time, there's just one guy, and we've become friends since then. And, you know, having each other kind of brings me back to those days of soccer and the times at Planet Fitness with my buddy when I first started going to the gym, of like having other people to push you forward. So he pushes me, I help push him, and we help push one another. I mean, the lieutenant pushes me. He's been a great guy. And that made me realize that with this podcast, it's kind of something I want to have, to be vulnerable enough to you to talk and kind of explain where my journey is right now, but also to have this as a thing to record where I'm at, and to, you know, when I'm being lazy and I don't want to, I'm trying to avoid that trough of I don't want to work out, I don't want to go to the gym. I want to keep on that peak and keep going. So by talking to you, I'm having that accountability for myself, and I'm hoping that helps, not to be inspirational, but I hope that helps inspire you to be like, I got to go do this thing. So yeah, I'm trying to be vulnerable enough to you, and I'll talk about some deep subjects here and there, and I already have some ideas, but like I said, it's going to be mostly fitness oriented. But this path with law enforcement has been really great for me, growth wise, as a man, and I hope it continues to do so. I know it will. And looking towards the future with training and what I'm going to do now, I am going to do some, you know, Olympic weightlifting stuff. I don't think I'm going to do snatches because I've never loved them. It was one of those things where I only loved them when I was doing well at them, which is a stupid but necessary lesson in life, where like sometimes you need to do the things that you don't want to do. So maybe I'll do some of them. I'm going to do some clean and jerk probably because that was really my bread and butter. I might do some like power cleans into jerks. We'll see. But cleans are just such a great force of nature when it comes to explosivity and athleticism. It's the reason why they do them so much in, you know, wrestling and football and baseball and pretty much all the sports. They have it as one of their training factors in sports. So I'll probably do that. Probably going to work on benching and, you know, my deadlift, because I never really got to work on my bench when I was Olympic weightlifting. You kind of don't bench and you don't really do anything with your biceps all that much. So that's something I've kind of learned over the last several months, and I'm going to continue to do that. And lastly, I'm going to run a lot, and that's the one that I'm going to have to learn how to love again, because you do get that high and that payoff from it, which is great. But that's something I used to be able to do really well because of high school sports. I used to run so much. So it's in here in my brain, and I know I can do it, but it's all now a bodily thing where I have to function well enough to do that. I have to run more to be better at it. And it's such a gut thing, and the mental state of like, yes, I know mentally I can do it, but that grit of like pushing myself forward has been so necessary for me growth wise. So I'm going to do a lot of that, and you guys will hear about that as we go forward. And the reason I bring this up is I'm not hired by these people yet. I have a conditional offer. I'm not going to say I'm hired until I'm hired. But until then, hopefully I'll make Academy in August or later. At some point, I will be in Academy. academically and emotionally, it's going to be a very hard thing. And I know that those two things are going to be the hardest things for me personally. I'm a smart guy. I know that. I've tried to learn that better. It's never been like a strong suit for me, confidence-wise, but I have a hard time studying. And I know that's just like effort. So I know that learning the stuff is going to be difficult for me, and I have to ramp up to that. So I have this kind of weird mindset where it's like, if that is going to be hard, let me just get my physicality, the thing that I enjoy, in check. So then I know I'm going to be good for that. I know I'm not going to be 100% good because it's still going to kick my butt more than I could ever imagine. I probably will never have anything like it ever again in my life. But if I know that I'm in a good spot with that, then I can really put my focus all into the academics and not worry about it too much. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. God willing, I go to that. God willing, I'll be a good law enforcement officer. I really want to be compassionate towards people, and I want to do my job well, and I think I'll enjoy it. I just want to be a good person towards other people, and I want to do what's required of me in the course of that. So stay tuned for that. As you can tell, there's a lot of rambling I do, and I hope you don't mind. Hopefully you enjoy it. These podcasts, I'm not really sure about the frequency of what's going to happen, whether it's once a week, bi-weekly, or what that looks like. And in terms of Academy, when I get there someday, I'm kind of hoping that I can have it as a way to unload. And I hope you find that interesting. I obviously won't be able to go into everything involved with that, I'm sure, but I still would love to be able to talk to you guys about that. And I hope you find it interesting, and I hope it gives you good perspective of what it entails to become a law enforcement officer, and maybe it'll give you some hope to say like, oh, this is what cops actually have to do their job. They're not just, people getting badges slapped on them. So I'm human at the end of the day. I'm sure I will, say some annoying things on these podcasts, but I just want to be authentic with you. And I hope you enjoy that. So stay tuned for future things. I am in the barn, like I said. I think I'll predominantly be here in terms of recording. I'm sure the scenes will change once in a while. But so yeah, thank you for tuning in. If you want to follow me on social media, like I said in the beginning, at the Post Lift Podcast, that's going to be on my YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, at the Post Lift Podcast. All those words, no periods, no slashes, no underscores, anything like that. Give me a follow. I appreciate it. If you want to like these things, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Lastly, if you want to leave a comment, whether you want to say hi, or if you want to comment on something, or even if you have a topic you want to hear about that you're maybe curious about, I deeply appreciate it. I'd love if you would reach out, or even if you DM me and saying, hey, I like the podcast, I'd like to hear about XYZ, or you said this thing in the podcast, I'd like to know more about that. I really want to cater to you guys, even if this is something that I'm doing kind of for myself. I still want to keep it involved for you. So I hope you enjoy this. Thank you so much, and we will continue to do this. So I will see you in the future, and I hope you have a great day. See ya. Bye-bye.